Hello, my friends. Thank you for being with me today. Before I start sharing thoughts with you, I must tell you that I can't be with you for the next 2 weeks, but I will be back on July 25, and I already look forward to it. All right, I was thinking the other day that I never saw my first patio until I was 1947, and we went to California for the first time. It, the thought of, we had porches, verandas, sometimes tiled areas for overflow parties, but the thought of having a sort of outdoor living room or kitchen was unheard of where we lived. In the first place, you could only sit outdoors about 5 months a year at the most. Secondly, and this is the main problem, all our garden furniture back when I was a child, 1930s, was either made of wood or painted metal. And in the heavy storms we would have about every week or 10 days, the wood would rot, and the metal would crack or rust, and weighed a ton to try to move. I still remember the heaviness of those chairs, lounges. You could barely push them. You see, plastic furniture didn't come in until after the Second World War. Well, plastic was an old invention, but not in general use, say like garden furniture, until, mid or late 1940s at the earliest. So if we wanted to have a picnic or a cookout, we would go down by the river to a beautiful city park where they had grills where you could cook, places to fry your eggs, picnic grounds, benches, tables, and best of all, places to build a campfire safely, a live campfire. And after grilling or frying our supper, we would build a campfire and family and some friends and sit around in a circle. And that would be the time of sharing stories. And my father was a past master of ghost stories. He really knew how to tell them. Full of suspense, building up the feeling of the unknown as the dark night around us and the dark trees. And when he would finish his stories, my mother often quoted that wonderful old, centuries-old Scottish prayer, blessing, invocation, whatever you want to call it, from ghoulies and ghosties and long-leggedy beasties and things that go bump in the night. May the good Lord deliver us. Oh, how we love that last line. Things that go bump in the night. Things you can't see. The unseen menace creeping up at you imperceptibly, crawling near you, but not described, just hinted at. Oh, how that would release the imagination, particularly the subconscious imagination. Things that go bump in the night. Good storytellers have always known this. Movie producers, the writers of really good sensational spy novels know this. Have mystery in your telling. Emphasize the unknown, the unexplored. Far more powerful than showing the monster's face is showing the faces of those looking at the monster. And then your rioting imagination, of course, can fill in that unseen face. Far scarier. Unfortunately, not only good storytellers know this, but tyrants, unscrupulous politicians, cult leaders, Abusers of all kinds know this very well also, and they know how to exploit, how to use these deep, unexplored, unimaginable, unhealed fears and wounds so far below the surface. They imply there are huge menaces out there, things worse than you can imagine, that are waiting to get you if you so much as question us or push the boundaries, or even, most of all, if you dare to leave. You cannot imagine the awful things out there that will get you. You know, on the ancient old maps, unexplored oceans, they would often print in the lines, "Here there be dragons." The unexplored fears are full of dragons, the unseen, the menace creeping up on us. When Roosevelt said during the Great Depression, often quoted, "There's nothing to fear but fear itself," many people thought, what a strange remark. There's lots of things out there to fear. But he understood that underlying unexplored fear, whether individual or communal, especially national, if it gets out of hand, it can destroy the power to think, to observe, to plan, to reason, to look long and hard at actual evidence. Unexplored fear gives rise first to rumors that spread like wildfire, then conspiracy theories. And that can lead to hate, scapegoating, and worst of all, increased victimhood to whatever abuser or tyrant wants to keep their grip on you. Distract them with things to fear, with things to hate, things to amuse also. But the main thing is that they are distracted by their unexplored fears. This kind of thing was the root of pogroms, racial genocides, holocausts, over centuries. It was the roots of that epidemic of witchcraft terror that, oddly enough, reached its height during the Renaissance of all times, when art, new forms of art, literature, poetry, song was rising in the world. So were these fears from the 1400s up to the late 1600s, 3 centuries. And this communal construct was so deeply rooted and so widespread that the power of it was the mystery. Anyone could be a secret witch, not easily identifiable like racial prejudice or religious prejudice. This was something that could infect your spouse, your pastor, your judge, your neighbor. They look so innocent by day, but at night, when you can't see them, then they show their witch-like powers. Then is when they go off to the satanic orgies. Could be anyone. 3 centuries of it. I wonder if some of you remember in the 1980s of all things, in America, a similar panic rose, again based on actual literal witchcraft fears. 1980s. It became centered around the idea of satanic cults, especially designed to abuse children. And all kinds of daycare, preschool, child care groups were brought into court. People lost their reputations, they lost their jobs. None was ever proved against them. Later it was found mainly to arise from what you might call coercive interviewing by those talking with children who would try to please the person asking them preconceived, pointed questions. And the scary part of it, to be sure, there are cults that abuse children along with abusing a lot of other people. But the scary part of this was it was thought to be a wide national, maybe international network. Anyone could be out there, unidentifiable by appearance. Anyone could be a secret satanic worshiper. It could be your congressperson. It could be your neighbor. It could be the judge. It could be the police force. It could be someone in your family. But the point was they were all there in a vast network. And if you dared to question too much, to mess with them, they would get you. This was actually a communal panic. And unfortunately, our present administration is using the same scary tactics to divert and distort. Have you noticed in recent speeches how often Trump now is mentioning the menace of communism, by which he means anyone with liberal leanings? Did you notice he's beginning to spread that fear, just like Joe McCarthy tried back for years and succeeded in the 1950s. And the thing was, you never know who is your secret communist spy. Again, it could be anyone, your neighbor, your pastor, your own spouse, maybe even your president. The vaguer the accusations, the better. Have you noticed how Hegseth recently talked to NATO? Again, vague menaces out there, saying to the European countries, if you allow this immigration to continue, your way of life is going to be destroyed. There would be no more Europe. He used those words. Terror. You know, now old movies, especially the vampire movies, you remember the fog machines? There was a special machine off screen that would pump clouds of fog into the picture to add to the feeling of mystery and the unknown menace, the unseen, and things that can happen in the fog that you can't identify. Our government is using these fog machines. Yes, there is an immigration problem, we all know that. We've got to find ways, with human rights involved, of bringing in true refugees. But the fog machine, when it blows, makes us believe what they say. These are vast, raping, murderous armies right at the gates of our nation. There are real fears, and there are the fears that rise from the fog machines. In old times, ancient days, in the cities like London, for example, where great banks of fog roll in from the oceans as well as rise from the river, and combined with the smoke from coal-burning homes, would make a thick, dense atmosphere that could settle down on the city streets for hours or days at a time, where everything is unfamiliar now. Anything could be out there in this fog. People, even the street lights didn't help. Even torchlight didn't help. It would just reflect back at you. Anything could be out there in this fog. Nothing that was familiar is familiar anymore. Your neighborhood has now become a potentially monster-filled place. Back in those early days, there were what were known as street finders, people who made it their business to explore beyond their neighborhoods. Most people centuries ago didn't go much beyond their own neighborhoods. There was no public transit, a lot of robbers, scary things. You'd stayed where you knew people, your own neighborhood. But these street finders deliberately went beyond their neighborhoods and explored all kinds of neighborhoods all the way around, knew their way almost by heart, unfamiliar streets to most people. They were people with a sense of direction, a sense of touch, most of all, people who remembered reality, who remembered what it was like when the streets were clear. And these people, sometimes members of your own household or across the street, would often be drawn in, sometimes employed as a guide, or offered their services if families needed to go somewhere, groups of people needed to go somewhere, or even one or two. He would not rely on a torch because that just reflected the light back in this thick piece of fog. He would hold your hand, and you would hold the hand of the ones going with you, maybe a long line of people holding hands, so no one is lost in the fog, no one left behind. And he, able to move by touch, sensing, and most of all, the memories of when things were clear, how things really look in reality when there is no fog. These street guiders, these street finders, would guide this long line of people holding hands through the dark, blacked out streets. I heard during the actual blackouts of the Second World War, they were using many of these same tactics because the blackouts were total. No street lights. Headlights on cars were covered in flashlights too, covered with a blue substance. And when the fog would set in, these wardens would again form lines of people holding hands and guide them through dark, unknown streets. Trusted hands who remember what it was like when it was clear and what it will be again when it is clear. Holding hands through the dark streets. Trusted hands. Thank you for being with me, and I will see you in 2 weeks on July 25. Until then, bye now.